Hello, you're welcome. You're welcome onto my channel today, and it gives me great joy to observe you are viewing this video. I am Dr. Olayinka Akanle. I am a lecturer in the university. I am a sociologist. I'm a researcher. I'm a public speaker, and I'm a life coach. On this channel, I do a number of stuffs. But all the stuffs I do, you can cluster them into four: sociology, research, international migration, and relationship. Meanwhile, have you subscribed to this channel? If not, what are you waiting for? Kindly go ahead and click the subscribe button on your screen. Tap the subscribe button on your screen to subscribe to this channel for wonderful contents. Meanwhile, if you have subscribed previously, thank you very much for staying tuned. Today, I want to address a topic within the confines of sociology. What is this topic? Cultural diversity and national development. This topic is very important because most societies are to a very large extent culturally diverse. It's very difficult to see a monocultural society. That is a society whereby all of them have a single culture, especially at the national level. So in a state, we also call it state, that is at country level. So this video is particularly talking about cultural diversity at a very broad level, at the country level or at the state level. So it's very difficult to see a country or a state where they have a single culture. That's what I call monocultural state or country. So most countries across the world have many cultures because they are like amalgam or amalgamation of many nations. So a nation is a society where they share common history, common identity, common culture, everything in common. But a state, a country definitely can be an amalgam of many nations. So it's within this confine that I discuss cultural diversity and national development. And this topic is very important because usually people look at cultural diversity as a liability. And I say, from my perspective as a sociologist, cultural diversity is an asset. It's an asset. Meanwhile, there's a video on this channel titled, "What is Culture and Why Do We Study People and Culture?" So view that video also, in sync with this, so you can have because there are some things I've said in that video that I'm only assuming that you already know in this video. So view that video on what is culture and why study people and culture. So now, what is culture? Culture is just a simple, the totality of a way of life of people, how they live their life, in totality. Both tangible and intangible culture. But culture generally, weaves societies together. It is the culture that gives people their identity, their orientation, their worldview, because within the culture that people live. So that's how we say people are the culture, and culture is the people. So the culture and the people, they are intrinsically intertwined, interwoven. So culture is that significant element that weaves societies together. That's what gives them a sense of a people. And take note of all these things I'm saying, these concepts I'm throwing and the explanation I'm giving. So culture is very important. You cannot understand the people without understanding their culture. And you cannot understand the culture of a people without understanding the people, because the people embody the culture. And culture determines how people behave. So cultural diversity, what does this mean? This means the multiplicity of culture in a particular social system. This social system can be a country, can be a state. So when you have cultural diversity, that is, there are multiplicities of different culture within the same social system. That means you have, I don't forget we say culture is the people. So that means you have different culture, people with different cultural heritage, or different cultural systems or realities in that particular society. And this is very important for us to pay attention to. So cultural diversity necessarily does not have to be a liability, but an asset. And national development now will mean a society or people who are able to meet their needs people who are able to progress, people who are able to empower the people. You know, a state, when we talk about development, we talk about sustainable progress, where you have minimal poverty, where you have, minimal insecurity or absence of insecurity, where you have significant gender equity and gender equality, where you have a lot of, and people have the orientation that this society, this country, is able to make me be my best. So national development in this instance means where the significant proportion of people in that society have the consciousness that they can be the best they can be. Their basic life and even luxurious life can be met in the long run. So national development means widespread absence of underdevelopment, widespread absence of poverty, wide availability of significant infrastructure to meet their life aspiration. So the essence here is that people have this consciousness but now, a very important point I want you to note in this lecture is the fact that cultural diversity is not a problem in its own right. It actually can be an asset, because that means we have something we call cultural infrastructure, cultural asset. We have tangible and non-tangible culture. All of them can be assets in the way that we should not see culture because they are diverse. Some countries have so many diverse cultures, and in many instances, this diversity have been seen as a liability, where people begin to instrumentalize or weaponize their cultural identity to navigate or negotiate for resources and that causes a lot of friction in that society, where they're saying, okay, is this cultural group that have been dominating everybody, and it causes a lot of friction and problem. So, but because many countries even have hundreds of different cultures within the same state, within the same country, you see this cultural competition, cultural problems across the world, Africa, Asia, even the United States of America. Everybody is not the same. In the UK, even in Canada, they have different cultures within their geographical and social boundary. So it normally should not be a problem. So it depends on how we look at it. That means it's very important for people to have a national identity. Even within these different smaller cultures, there must be a strong national or country identity, where that's why some people have lingua franca. Okay, among all of these different cultures, ethno-linguistic groups, or different languages as elements of culture, can we adopt a single one to be able to have a national language, lingua franca? But there are some countries that say, well, all these smaller cultural languages are very important for us to be able to we must accommodate all these different cultures, all these different languages. For example, in South Africa, most of the major languages in South Africa are national languages. You talk about Swahili, you talk about Afrikaan, you talk about all manners. Many of the local languages are considered lingua franca. Lingua franca, that is the national language. And I once lived in South Africa, and I discovered this, and I found it very interesting. All their local languages are mostly lingua franca, so you can use any of them. So a very important point I want to mention again is the fact that if you look at it critically, culture or cultural elements can actually be assets. In fact, in development sociology, we call these different cultures, we call them cultural assets. Cultural assets, these different cultural elements or cultural heritage, all the languages, all the social geographies of these particular countries where culture is diverse, we call them cultural assets, cultural heritage, cultural heritage, cultural asset, cultural infrastructure. And this cultural infrastructure normally should be able to be used to jumpstart and sustain development, to the extent that we talk about concept of sustainable development. What is sustainable development? That is, we're not just talking about a development now. We are talking about sustainable development. This is development that can meet the needs of today's generation without compromising or destroying the capacity or the opportunities of the future generation to meet their own needs as well. That means you are thinking about the future generation as you are developing yourself today. And that's very important. So culture now can be used as a tool for development and sustainable development of countries. How do we do this? Don't forget, I've spoken about tangible culture and non-tangible culture. We talk about non-tangible cultures, mean like the language, the greetings, and names and all whatnot. So, and if you look at tangible culture in terms of maybe their geographical environment, the way they build their houses, and even a lot of other things that you can see. I told you the culture is the totality of a way of life of a group of people. So the way they live their life generally can be considered as cultural assets and cultural infrastructure. Now look at it. We believe that these cultural assets can be turned to economic assets, can bring economic opportunities to countries if we look at them carefully. For example, you can turn your geographical environment and cultural elements that you have in the buildings, the histories in that country, to economic opportunities. For example, you can turn your cultural heritage, you can turn your cultural environment and systems to tourist attractions. There are people who fly all over the world to go visit some places. Those places are part of the culture of the people. To look at some historical heritage, some historical landmarks in those places. So we can turn the elements, trajectories, processes of our culture into national development opportunities. Let me give you an example of Mauritius. Mauritius is a country that is so strong in terms of turning their historical diversity into economic opportunities and assets. Tourism is a big one that culture can give you. Unfortunately, some countries have not been able to develop their tourist system from their culture. But Mauritius have been able to turn its own cultural environment, cultural systems, cultural elements to tourist attractions. For example, today, the economy of Mauritius is built strongly on tourism, to the extent that 1/4, 25% of Mauritius population, is employed in the in tourism sector. What about that? 25%. Imagine countries living. That means you can use your cultural system to wipe out poverty, to reduce unemployment, to reduce agitation, to reduce insecurity or exclusion. That means the different cultures in that culturally diverse countries can then be turned to economic hubs. To look at the cultural strengths of every culturally diverse, a diverse cultural system within a system. Then you look at their strengths and turn them to economic hub in terms of tourism. What will this do? It will increase the income of those people in those environments. It will increase their employment. It will build their per capita income. It will give them peace and tranquility. It will give them a sense of integration, that they are not being excluded, but they are being included in driving the national economy. And then the country, poverty will become a thing of the past, and unemployment will become a thing of the past. Women in those systems, men in those systems will be integrated into the national economic system. And ultimately, unemployment will become a thing of the past. So this is very important. This is a way. It also brings self-confidence to everybody in that country. Then it also brings a sense of integration. A major problem that usually occurs in culturally diverse countries is lack of a sense of national identity or state identity, or the issue of marginalization, or the issue of nationalism. Everybody claiming his own ethnic nationality. So there's a problem of integration. But if everybody is accepted within its own cultural system, if everybody is carried along to be appreciated, so rather than we have cultural competition, we have cultural accommodation and cultural integration. So it's now for everybody in culturally diverse country to pull towards the center of a national identity, at the same time retain their original cultural identity. We are not saying throw away your original culture, but there's a need for a sense of national orientation. that we are one, even though we are diverse. So there is strength in diversity. There is strength in cultural diversity. It means everybody is different, yet everybody is the same. So how do we have this integration? One that is very important is to have accommodation of all these cultures. It's very important, cultural accommodation and the rulers, the political leaders, rather than creating diverse information, they should bring, accommodating information. They should not use politics to destroy or to conscientize the people in terms of their differences. Unfortunately, many politicians in Africa, Asia, and many other countries weaponize this cultural diversity for their own selfish gain, which in the long run is at the detriment of a national identity. So the leaders have a lot to do to create a sense of integration and accommodation of all the diverse cultures. Yet everybody, including you that you are viewing this video, must realize that you are unique in your cultural identity and diversity, and accommodate others also, realizing their uniqueness. That's why in that video on culture that I said you should view, I spoke about ethnocentrism and cultural relativity, meaning that you must not judge other people's culture on the standard of your own culture, and you must not negatively judge other cultures as barbaric or backward, because all cultures serve unique purposes to drive growth and create an identity for the set of people. So everybody must accommodate other people to be sure that everybody is happy within the cultural system, because all these different cultures they possess economic and social opportunities that can be used for growth. They all have work ethics, national values, that can be brought together to aggregate for national development. Together, everyone is stronger than when they are apart. Though globalization, westernization is pushing people together, but in that coming together, uniqueness, are still very important. And that's why we believe all these culturally diverse systems can be brought together for a uniform culture. I encourage you to view this video to the end. It's a very strong video that I think you need to see to the end so that you can understand the point I'm trying to make. So in all of this, so the national identity can develop, the country becomes more integrated, united instead of divisive tendencies. And this, because we're able to aggregate all of these different cultures, then we then have what we call development from below, inclusive development. That means bringing all different cultures together and driving development from the grassroots, because every cultural element is being appropriated for the common good of everybody. And in that sense, you have what we call inclusive development and bottom-up approach to development. Rather than the development that is centralized, that is top-bottom, we have what we call bottom-top approach, because everybody from the grassroots, every culture is brought together and appropriated to drive a national identity. Isn't that very fantastic? So don't forget the concept of cultural asset, cultural infrastructure, cultural diversity as engine of growth, as engine of progress, as engine of unity, as engine of development, as engine of national integration, as engine of national identity. So the cultural diversity does not have to create a problem. There is strength and there is unity in the diversity. And we must appreciate the diversity there is strength in differences. And this is very important. So we must acknowledge cultural diversity. We must appreciate cultural diversity. We must appropriate cultural diversity, accommodate cultural diversity, and use cultural diversity for national unity and national development. There are different values and norms in these different cultures that can assist to strengthen the country. There are values of hard work, values of respect, values of orderliness, values of honesty, values of respect, values of patriotism, and many other values that can be appropriated from different cultures to form national slogan and national narrative to be able to drive growth and development. So largely speaking, cultural diversity should not be a liability or reasons for conflict and crisis. Rather, should be converted to economic opportunities, cultural assets, cultural infrastructure, cultural gains for sustainable development of the country and the world. Thank you very much for viewing this video. Until I see you in my next video, kindly subscribe to this channel and tell others and share widely. Bye for now.